Hello, and welcome to Afternoon Tea with Karen and Karen's Nazi playlist. I'm finally catching up. This is some stuff from a few weeks ago. Convenient Nazis doing PR for Labor's hate speech laws in New South Wales, social media, and private chat stuff. I have been following these guys for long enough now that they have some sort of relationship with the government. They either work for them, Mossad, or both. It's consistent. They consistently demonstrate or do stuff that helps enable the government to make laws. Like in order to ban the Nazi salutes and symbols, they lowered the threshold for hate speech, which has allowed all these new laws to come in.
A neo-Nazi activist remains locked up tonight, refused bail over fears for Sydney's Jewish community after an alleged anti-Semitic rant at yesterday's March for Australia rally. The Rockdale father has been charged under the state's new hate speech laws and could face years behind bars.
Leading the way, Brandon Koschel, marching with anti-immigration protesters in city streets. Then, later on stage, it's alleged Koschel made anti-Semitic comments.
The greatest enemy to this nation. They always have been. They're an enemy to Western civilization.
Arrested and charged with publicly inciting hatred on the grounds of race. Comments police say live streamed on platforms including YouTube and X.
I want Australia and I do Thomas Sewell.
Thomas Sewell, the former head of the recently disbanded National Socialist Network. It's alleged Koschel is linked to the neo-Nazi group. Police in court describing the Rockdale father of one's comments as brazen, especially in the wake of the Bondi terror attack. Magistrate Daniel Covington saying, serious set of facts alleged to have occurred in a situation where the community is definitely very acute to comments of their nature being made. In refusing Brandon Koschel bail, the magistrate told the court a difficulty was setting conditions, preventing him from associating with groups given the alleged ideologies involved. The charge stemming from new hate speech laws introduced last year.
We respect the right of people to engage in peaceful protest, but that right ends when people engage in hate speech.
So, association laws as well as social media stuff in this story. Now, the reason the Nazis don't have soft hands, well, I don't know what he does for a job, but the baby Nazis, they punch each other and punch stuff so that they get used to taking hits. And I'm a little bit excited about this court case because we might find out how worshipping a god affects your DNA.
Back home now, and there are reports this morning that neo-Nazis plan to kidnap our Prime Minister in the hours after the Bondi shooting.
Let's go live to Emily Francis at Lakemba Mosque. And Emily, they also plan to attack Muslim sites of worship.
Yeah, David, it's believed neo-Nazis used encrypted chat services to discuss abducting the Prime Minister and make threats towards mosques, including references here at Lakemba. The Sydney Morning Herald reports that this was not a formed or operational plan, rather a series of violent threats and ideas exchanged online. It's believed police have uncovered this, but have not commented on what action has been taken or whether any charges have been laid. The Herald reports that these messages were exchanged in the hours after the Bondi terror attack, but just this week the Lakemba Mosque received several copies of a lengthy letter containing death threats for Australia Day. Now, those reports from the Herald claim key organisers for anti-immigration rallies planned for tomorrow were also involved in these violent online groups.
A shocking plot to kidnap the Prime Minister has come to light this morning. A recording leaked to 9 newspapers reportedly reveals a man being offered $10,000 to rent a van and abduct Anthony Albanese in the wake of the Bondi terror attack. That was among multiple threats allegedly discussed in an online chat room run by March for Australia organisers.
First and foremost, the first thing that came to my head was, that's crazy. 2, how cheap you are. 3, have you lost your fucking brain cells?
What? They did it on purpose so everyone knows how the new laws work.
This week, the Australian government is rushing to pass a law that could criminalise the things you say in public, at work, and in private chats. Now, you might think that you're not a hateful person and therefore this isn't going to affect you. But as a lawyer who's been a prosecutor and a police officer, I can tell you that this law is written in an extremely vague way. So vague that it's going to be dangerous. And it's being pushed through Parliament with almost no public debate in response to Bondi's tragedy in December. But to see past the headlines, you have to understand the details. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to break down what this law means for you, your job, and your freedom to speak, showing you the risk in the fine print that most people are going to miss. This isn't just about stopping online trolls and violent extremists. It is a significant expansion of government power pushed through Parliament at alarming speed. And here's what I mean by alarming speed. The official committee that reviews this kind of legislation gave the public 48 hours to respond to it. 48 hours to review a long, complex document that will reshape our laws and our lives. And if you want to say something about it, it's already too late. Submissions were due by last Thursday. So a law that is going to criminalise speech will pass before most Australians know anything about it. So this raises an obvious but a critical question. Is this how major laws impacting our fundamental rights should be made? The government has framed this as a necessary response to the tragedy that took 15 lives at a Hanukkah event in Bondi. And while most people, if not everybody, agrees on the need to combat hatred and extremism, rushing legislation like this complicates things. It leads to mistakes, it leads to unintended consequences, and a significant potential for government overreach. Now, you have to bear in mind, we don't have a Bill of Rights, we don't have a freedom of speech, so once the law passes, that's the law. So that's why people like me are sounding the alarm. The primary concern, coming from a prosecutorial background, is that this lowers the criminal threshold, or at least lowers the threshold to charge people, and that's really what matters. The focus shifts from your intentions and your actions to someone else's interpretation of what hatred is, which is going to have real consequences, not just for you personally, but also for your job, for people's ability to get a visa, and your freedom to discuss difficult topics openly. So let's look past the politics and examine what the bill actually does. This is what's called an omnibus bill. It bundles numerous charges into one package by amending 5 different areas of law. Conveniently, these are broken into schedules, so let's go through them. Schedule 1 amends the criminal law. Schedule 2 alters visa law, granting pretty significant powers, and new ones at that, to grant or cancel visas. Schedule 3 addresses importation, which is meant to apparently ban hateful material, whatever that is. And Schedule 4 introduces significant firearms reform, including the controversial national gun buyback scheme. And Schedule 5 deals with what are called transitional rules, which allow for the implementation of the new system. But our focus is going to be on Schedule 1, at least at the beginning, as it creates what are called hate speech offences. We already had hate speech offences. These aren't new. They used to require intentional advocacy of violence, but the new law establishes an entirely new offence for publicly inciting or promoting hatred. So here's the key change. It will be a crime to publicly incite or promote hatred towards a person or group based on their race, colour, national or ethnic origin. The conviction carries up to 5 years in prison. None of this is overly controversial yet, but the term publicly is defined impossibly broadly, and it includes the internet, covering social media posts, videos, blogs, and online comments. The law also creates a new mechanism for the government to formally prescribe prohibited hate groups. Now, the government says that this is a measure that will allow them to target organisations like the National Socialist Network that have so far avoided being classified as a terrorist group. But once a group is prescribed, and remember, this can be any group that the government deems to be a group that can be prescribed, not just National Socialists, it becomes a serious crime to even be a member of the group and to recruit for them or to even provide support. So let's get into the controversies of this. On the surface, it may sound reasonable. We all want to combat neo-Nazis and racial hatred. However, the details are deeply concerning, and this is why. First, there are obviously major free speech issues. The new offence hinges on this vague concept of inciting or promoting hatred. But who defines hatred?
Government. And where we're headed is Brazil.
In Brazil, a veterinarian student named Isadora Borges is facing a potential 10-year prison sentence, all because of 2 posts on social media. Back in 2020, Borges shared her views on gender ideology, stating that biological sex is unchangeable. She was reported to federal police for transphobia by a local politician. Under a 2019 Supreme Court ruling, transphobia is treated as a criminal offense equivalent to racism. Her defense, supported by Alliance Defending Freedom International, argues that this is a major violation of free speech. As her trial begins this week, the case has become a flashpoint for the debate over online censorship in Brazil. And joining us now is Julio Poole, legal counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom International, which is providing legal services to Borges. And thank you so much for joining us. Now, here in the United States, this is unheard of, not having free speech like this. So tell me more about the censorship in Brazil.
Yes, correct. Free speech in Brazil is in danger. We're basically in the dark ages for free speech in the country. Isadora's case is not an exception. There is a real trend of silencing speech. Many people cannot say what they want. Many people cannot say and voice their opinions on matters such as the reality of men and women, a biological reality. This is what happened to Isadora. She spoke on her ex post 5 years ago, and because of that, a transgender politician brought the charges to the police, brought the case to the police, so the police could press charges against Isadora. Now she's facing over potential sentence of up to 10 years in jail just because she said what she believed was the truth. This is really dangerous for Brazil and for the rest of the world as well.
Now, the U.S. Supreme Court has been increasingly hearing cases surrounding gender ideology. Do you think that other countries could soon follow suit on this?
I think they should, but you know what? The problem is not just what the law says, but here is just the prosecutors that want to really punish people for what they say. Here, the punishment is the process, because then it creates a chilling effect in which nobody wants to speak. We have many cases in Brazil. One of those cases is, for example, Pastor Douglas. He wrote a book 3 years ago for his church, Assemblies of God, with over 30 million followers in that church. It was a basic book on what gender ideology is, philosophical foundations, theological foundations, and because of that, he was also brought into charges by the same prosecutors in Brazil. So what happened to Isadora, what happened to Pastor Douglas, what's happening to Nina Borges, also another of our clients from the UK that's suffering the same censorship. They cannot say anything on social media in Brazil because if they say it, then these prosecutors try to apply this law, better said, a decision from the Supreme Court that equates racism to transphobia and homophobia. So this, short answer, yes, they should follow what the U.S. is doing, but the reality is that they are not doing it because they also want to censor the citizens so that this truth cannot come to the public.
And Julio, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but where do you think this case might be headed, and what are the implications of this case for the entire Latin American region?
So it's bad precedent for Brazil, bad precedent for the rest of the countries, because first of all, because if we have a court, a Supreme Court, because eventually this might come to the Supreme Court, and if the Supreme Court decides, it will be one of the first instances that we know about of somebody being accused and successfully convicted for homophobia, transphobia, for what they posted online, which in this case, as in Isadora's case and many other people's cases, is not even an insult to somebody. Her posts were not directed to any person in particular. They were just mere opinions criticizing, or better said, theorizing on what Simone de Beauvoir said on one of her books when she said talking about sex and gender on Simone de Beauvoir's writings. So it's just basically opinions, a theoretical level, philosophical level, and if that can be punished, you can imagine what they can do.
Sure. Well, Julio, thank you so much for joining us. Boy, I tell you, we're going to be following this case very closely.
Thank you.
And that'll do. See you later. Bye.